she had postpartum issues that I was so unaware of that impacted our relationship. And we never talked about it until, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. And I'm not asking you about postpartum for your wife. I'm asking, were you aware at 29 of all the things that she needed during her pregnancy, and were you able to show up in those ways?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
And the reason I would say yes is because at the time when we found out that she was pregnant, I was working away from home. I was working with the New York Mets. So I was spending 6 months out of the year away from home with like visits every once in a while. And then 6 months I was home.
Yeah.
When I found out that she was pregnant, I was like, yo, I don't need to, I can't do this anymore. So I committed myself to being home and quit. Like I literally quit.
Wait,
Off season.
Oh, because I was with you to a point, the whole working away from home.
When I found out I was going to be a father, I wanted to make sure that there was no part of it that I was going to miss.
Got it.
Right. Even in the parts where the child wasn't here, like I wanted to be available for the doctor visits. I need to be dad from inception to, to the end of life.
All right, let's get to it. Welcome to the Dear Son Podcast. This is a safe space where men have vulnerable conversations about the fatherhood journey. Now, sometimes those conversations are heavy, sometimes they're light, changes from guest to guest. I never know until I start the show. As you see on the split screen, I have a guest in the podcast space tonight in my virtual studio, Mr. Rod Richard II. Welcome to the Dear Son Podcast. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm feeling blessed, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, love to have a smiling face on the other end. It makes it it makes it a lot lighter. Now you're in the podcast space too, man. Tell the folks a little bit about what your message is and about your podcast, because I don't want to forget that.
Yeah. So I have a podcast as well that's directed towards fatherhood. It's called the Forfeit Fatherhood Podcast. We kind of focus on four basic tenets that I think are really important in fatherhood. That's family, faith, finance, and fitness. So I kind of talk about each one of those topics each episode, or if I have a guest on, we may dive further into one of those. It may be more of a financial thing or more of a faith-based thing, but we try to cover those four bases because I think, like I said, those are kind of like the four pillars that hold up fatherhood.
That's awesome, man. And what helped me in managing my podcast was having pillars too, right? So for ours is we want to reveal trauma, we want to heal from the trauma, and we want to help others through telling the stories of it all. So I definitely appreciate you having a structure to your podcast, folks. Everything will be linked below. And as we get into the story, I'm sure you will want to subscribe to his content. Now let's get to it, man. Rod Richard II. That's the last time I'm saying. I'm gonna call you Rod, but the second, man. The second means that your father had some pride in the name and gave it to you, man. What is it?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
You know what is my father was named by his aunt. Nobody else in our family is named Rod or anything remotely close to it. But he wanted his first son. I actually ended up turning out to be his only son to be named after him. So I wear that badge with honor and everything that I do because, for the longest time I was Little Rod. And so no matter where I went, no matter how big I got to a point, I was Little Rod. And even some of my aunties to this day will call me Little Rod, even though I'm about 5 inches taller than my dad. So I love it. We didn't get a middle name, so we're just rolling with it. Rod Richard, no middle name, and I'm the second.
Yeah. I wish my dad had omitted my middle name, but that's a topic for another discussion. So clearly you're a father. What kind of father, well, not what kind of father are you yet, but tell us about your family. How many kids you have, boys, girls?
So I have two daughters, two girls, 9 and 7. And I am I got a dog. I guess that's the only boy I got in the house.
All right.
But yeah, man, I'm a girl dad through and through.
Yeah. Are you, if it's not too invasive, are you still holding out for the boy? Is that in the cards?
Sir.
It's done deal.
Done deal. We are a complete family at this point. We have talked about potentially adopting.
Okay.
But nothing as of yet. So just the two for now.
Yeah. How did you come to that agreement? Was it a tough conversation? And I'll give you some background. I had two girls first, right? And
Hmm.
then of course, well, not of course, but for me, I was hoping for a boy at some point, and the third one was a boy. Then we had a space of time where we thought we were done, and then number four came along, and that was a girl. And my son was so heartbroken because it was, he had two older sisters, and he was hoping for a boy.
Yeah.
When we had the reveal party, he literally walked out of the room crying. Like we had to go get him because he was so heartbroken, and there was so much girl energy. A year later, whatever we were doing kept working, and we had number five, and that was a boy. But
Okay.
we realized that we never really talked about how big we wanted our family to be. Was that an intentional conversation that you, and I assume you're married, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
married.
yeah.
Right.
Was that an intentional conversation? Because I'm always interested in the father's perspective of how many kids they want.
Yeah. You know what's funny is my wife is one of four.
Mm,
And I have four sisters. But with my mom, I'm the only child.
okay.
And so I grew up as an only child. So initially I was like, yo, we can have one. Like I'm looking at myself, we can have one and we'd be good. Like,
Yeah.
one kid, it's 2-on-1, we can manage that. And and so we didn't really have like, other than that, we didn't really have too
Yeah.
much of a conversation about like how many kids we wanted to have. I think it was just kind of like we knew we wanted to have our first one,
Right.
and we had the first one. And then, we were still open to the opportunity to have, more children.
Yeah.
And then the second one came, and my wife had to have a C-section both times. And according to the doctor, had this been, the early 1900s, she wouldn't have made it. That the
Got it.
first labor before she had to have the C-section, she was in labor for 39 hours.
Eesh.
And then
Wow.
the second one was scheduled, but just her body type is just, she's not going to be able to have a normal childbirth. So I was like, look, we got on the table twice to a massive surgery. Like, I don't know if we should do this again. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I would love to have another child, and I know we could give the love that a child needs, but
Yeah.
at what risk, you know? And so
Yeah.
we decided after the second that everything was, we were very happy. I mean, she definitely completes the book for us, for sure.
For sure, for sure, for sure, and I appreciate you sharing. I know that's kind of family details, so I appreciate you sharing it because I think it'll be helpful to somebody. Did you? What age were you when your children were born?
The first one I was 29.
Okay,
Yeah, I was 29.
all right. So you're much later in life than I was, and my wife and I had a conversation on another podcast a couple of weeks ago, like postpartum, like that whole process of what it is.
Yeah.
I was so unaware of what she was going through, and I was there. But because my wife was a trooper, like she's ex-military, she has a high level of pain tolerance and all of this. She never showed me that she was not well.
Mm.
Like she was struggling with something. So I was going on. For me, we went to the hospital. She had a baby. Labors weren't long, but we just now, and our youngest kid is 7. She had postpartum issues that I was so unaware of that impacted our relationship. And we never talked about it until, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. And I'm not asking you about postpartum for your wife. I'm asking, were you aware at 29 of all the things that she needed during her pregnancy, and were you able to show up in those ways?
Um, I would say yes and no.
Okay.
And the reason I would say yes is because at the time when we found out that she was pregnant, I was working away from home. I was working with the New York Mets, so I was spending
Mm,
6 months out of the year away from home, with like visits every once in a while, and then 6 months I was home.
yeah.
When I found out that she was pregnant, I was like, yo, I don't need to, I can't do this anymore. So I committed myself to being home, and quit. Like I literally quit
Wait,
mid
wait, wait.
off
Hold,
season.
hold, 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 hold. Oh, because I was with you to a point, the whole working away from home. I went
Yeah.
overseas for a year to provide, but
Hmm.
you made a pivot in real time. Like, how is it just as simple as family is more important? Or like, what were you going through? How did, like, walk us through?
Yeah.
It had to be the conversation in your head at least.
Yeah, yeah. Without, no, I mean, I guess we get into it. So when I was young, my father he was in my life like real heavy. Him and my mom were married until I was 4 or 5.
Mm.
And then they had their issues. He had his own little thing that he was dealing with. And so they split up. And so, my interactions with my dad for a real long time were like almost not there. It was a couple years, 3 or 4 years where I didn't even see him.
Wow.
And then when I did get to see him, it was like the visitation thing. So it was like every other weekend, a month in the summer,
Mm.
Christmas, that kind of stuff, right? And then when I started playing sports and got a little more serious, I had games and practices, and so I couldn't go anymore. So it was like that period of time where like I was missing having a father. And so when I found out I was going to be a father, I wanted to make sure that there was no part of it that I was going to miss.
Got it.
Right. Even in the parts where the child wasn't here, like I wanted to be available for the doctor visits. I
Right.
wanted to be there and be present because my sisters are older than me and they had, their relationships with baby daddies and things like that where like dudes just weren't
Gotcha.
around. And
Yeah.
I know what they struggle with having to go through pregnancies without having a father around. And I'm like, yo, I can't do that. I need to be dad from inception to the end of life. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so when we found out, we were actually on like a vacation. I had a little time off, so we took like a weekend vacation, and she wasn't feeling right, so we got things checked out, and I was like, "Look, I'm gonna be a dad. I'm gotta come home. I gotta come
Yeah.
home." Yeah.
So what did you? So clearly, family, your wife's health, family health is primary, but there's also a financial aspect of it. Like,
Of
how did
course.
were you prepared? How did you pivot? Like, what were those thoughts like, or you're just gonna figure it out? You had to make a decision, and you're gonna figure it out, and ultimately you did.
Yeah, I mean, I had connections with some people. Like
Okay.
I mean, I knew of some gyms and facilities that I could work at that had been, reaching out to me, and I had made connections through working with other people. So I had a network
Okay.
of other opportunities,
Yeah.
which definitely made it easier. I didn't know for sure that any of them were going to work out. Like I didn't
Got it.
know opportunities were actually going to be there, but I was prepared to, make that adjustment and then
Yeah.
figure it out.
Have you always been that logical in your decision making, or was this like a pivot in your life where everything like you it was a new thing for you to deal with this kind of pressure?
Yeah, you know what? Most people will tell you that I'm really logical. Like I think before I speak for sure. I definitely think things through. Um, that might have been one of the times I was more impulsive
Hmm.
than maybe some other times in my life, but
Okay.
I definitely think things through more often than not. Before I do something like that, I like to respond instead of react more often than not.
I can appreciate that. All right, so we'll come back to where we left off in the story with you making that decision, but you kind of let us in on a bit of your dynamic growing up. Can you take us back to like where you grew up, how you grew up? You gave us the nugget about the detail about your parents splitting, but what was childhood like for you and where?
So I was born in Oakland, California, but
Okay.
raised in Richmond, California, which is like 20 minutes west, east, west. No, it's a little north actually, because they're both on the water.
Okay.
Um, and like I said, my mother and father were together, the early part of my life. And then they split, and within a couple of years, maybe I say the year or two, my mom remarried, and I had a stepdad, but
Yeah.
my stepdad was, while he was a good dude in regards to stepping up and being a stepfather, because that's a hard role. Like I always commend dudes who step into that spot and take over being somebody else's father that's not
Right.
their kid. Um, but he was a workaholic, and mostly because he had to, because my mom was injured on the job, and so she's been on disability since I was like 7.
Wow.
And so he had to step up, and he was working his regular job and then working side jobs and then working overtime. So I didn't really see him other than like, his days off. And some days he would work his days off and then like dinner time, right? He'd
Right.
come home from work, he'd eat, he'd go to sleep, start all over.
Yeah.
So while I had a father figure, he was mostly absent, other than like, you learn a lot from seeing someone. So I
Sure.
learned how to work hard. I learned how to be a provider. I didn't get any like real emotional things from him, though, and that's one thing that I'm working on still is how to be more emotionally available, especially with my daughters. But I didn't get that, right.
Yeah.
So it was even though my mom had a husband, I was kind of in a single parent household
I get it.
because it was just me and her.
Yeah.
Other than, like I said, every once in a while he was there, like he might have got his vacation week off and was like, oh man, we going to the park.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I didn't get that kind of stuff. We didn't get like, him teaching me how to play sports or anything like that. Like anything I learned in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
playing with the guys around the block,
Yeah.
some of the older dudes, which could have led to trouble, because Richmond is a especially where I'm from in Richmond is a troubled area.
Yeah.
Then all the way to now. Well, now it's a little different, right? Like it's I guess we got like Google and all those tech companies
Right.
starting to take over the Bay Area. So things are a little different. But when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was rough. It was real rough. And my neighborhood was one of the roughest.
Paint that picture, man. Paint that picture, because I have an idea, but it's all cinema based, right? What you see in the movies, or what you hear about what the Bay Area is like.
Yeah.
E40, like that's the level of my ignorance of the Bay Area, just E40, right? But
Right.
paint that picture. And I know a couple people from Vallejo. I don't know where that is in relationship to where you're from, but paint the picture of what that neighborhood life was like. What, when you stepped outside your door, what was lurking?
Okay. So I lived at the last house on what they would call a cul-de-sac now, but in my neighborhood, it was a dead end, right?
Yeah,
So
for
it was
sure.
like the street ended. I was the last house. The next to my house was like a vacant lot. Directly across the street was literally a crack house. And so on the corner of my street, like it was so 4th and Main. So Main is the cross street, 4th Street is the street that I live on. Is literally like, this is a hood. This is like a gang neighborhood. So 4th and Main was the gang name. So like
Wow.
as you can imagine, going outside was like, you go outside in the daytime, it starts getting dark, you get inside.
Right.
Right. Because on the corner, there's an apartment complex, but that apartment complex, like if you've seen movies like Training Day, where he talk about going to the jungle.
Yeah.
Right. And he goes in and he pulls down that street, but it's like, people on the roof and like, so it's kind of like that situation. Maybe not as intense all the time, right? Because there's normal families that live there. It's not all just the gang, but those dudes are there, right? So on the corner, they're checking you to make sure, you going to the right place. And I think then was a little different than it was as I was growing up. Because the older dudes kind of kept you out of it.
Okay.
Right. Especially like if you play sports, like once they knew I played sports, it was like, yo, go back inside, get off the corner, stop hanging out over here, because they didn't want you in the way. Right. But then as I got to like being a teenager, right before we moved, it started being a situation where they was like, yeah, come on over here. Yeah, come over here, little homie. Like, come hang out with us now.
Yeah.
Because you're getting to be about that age where you can start doing stuff with us. So when I was young, I knew who everybody was. Like I knew who the players were. So I knew who to stay away from, because word traveled fast when a guy was doing something he wasn't supposed to do. Right. And when somebody was hot. So it was tough, man. It was a lot of at night, get down, right? Gunshots are going off, get in the hallway, hide out kind of thing. I remember when I was like 9, my mom, it was a drive-by on our street. And some dudes start running. My mom's car got all shot up. and insurance wasn't covering that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we didn't have a car for a while because of that. Police sirens and lights. It was a hot neighborhood, and it wasn't like a big one. So it was like one way in, one way out. We're in a
Wow.
dead end. So if trouble was coming our way, it was no way to escape it.
Did you ever struggle with the temptation of leaning into that life versus sports, or were you always clear that like this is not for me?
Nah, no, I never felt comfortable with it. You know what I mean? Like I have friends that dove deep into it,
Yeah.
and it just never felt right to me. I guess I had a little bit of a moral compass back then, and some of the stuff was just like that ain't right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then on top of that, my mom tried to, as much as she can, she kept us in church
Sure.
because and not necessarily, I mean, she's really religious, but I don't think she kept us in because she was forcing us to be religious. But it was more like, if you're not playing sports, I can keep you away from everybody if you got to go to Bible study,
Yeah.
right? If you got to go to choir. I wasn't even in the choir, and I was at choir rehearsal. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so she was trying to find ways to, keep us safe and keep us away from the trouble. And like I said, I just really never felt comfortable. Like I was adjacent.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I was right next to the dudes that was doing it. Even to this day, like some of my friends from my neighborhood are still involved. The ones that are still around,
Right.
that aren't locked up or in
Yeah.
a grave somewhere, are still really into it. But I've always known when it's starting to go this way, and I just yeah, I'm a going back in the house, dog. Y'all doing too much now.
Yeah. So sports became a clear focus for you. Which sports did you play and which did you excel at and kind of
Yeah.
make?
So when I was young, I played everything, right? Anything with a ball, we played, right? So baseball, soccer, football, basketball. And then as I got older, as I grew, I played baseball all the way through high school.
Okay.
I played football all the way through high school, and I got a football scholarship. So I stopped playing baseball, which maybe I, look back on, and maybe I should have stayed with baseball a little bit
Mhm.
more. But baseball is a tough sport, so I think I don't regret the way anything played out. I got to
Yeah.
play college football, and gave me some opportunities to do some special things. But as a kid, we played everything. Like, it
Yeah.
was anything was a game, right? Anything was a game.
Did anything in your sports career from through the highest level that you played, did you ever find yourself looking for that father figure, that relationship in a coach? Did you develop any of those along the way?
You know what? I'm gonna say no,
Okay.
because there was a period of time in my life where I didn't want it. You know what I mean? Like, I just wasn't. I'm cool. Like, I'm doing fine without it. Like, I don't need it. And I think that made it harder when my dad did come back into my life. It made it harder to form the relationship that we have now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, because I was like, yo, I'm doing fine. Like, I don't need a guy to be my father, kind of thing.
Right. I want to pause right here. We're going to take a quick break here from a sponsor, but I want to pick up with your father re-entering your life. We'll be right back. What's good, fam? I know you're watching the video right now, but I just wanted to highlight that Tate Whalen is a brand new sponsor to the podcast. TATEWHALUN. Go to the website. You'll find exquisite timepieces. You'll find glasses. You'll find very well crafted beaded bracelets. Black owned, responsibly managed. I purchased several items from them. This is not me reading from a script. I stand beside this company, and I wanted to share that with you. Now, when you get to checkout, after you put everything in your cart that your heart desires, use the code THEDSP, THEDSP. You'll get 20% off. He'll know that I sent you. God bless. Back to the show. All right, we're back. So we dropped off in a story, or left off in a story, took a pause in the story where you were introducing the fact that your father came back into your life. Let's help us understand the timing, your age, and what that was like initially, because it sounds like there's a relationship it's matured, but initially, how did you process through that?
Yeah, so like I said, it was a couple years where he wasn't around. He was like I said, he was dealing with some stuff on his own.
Mhm.
And he couldn't be. I mean, maybe he wanted to be, maybe maybe he didn't. I don't know. We've never actually had that conversation.
Mm.
It's funny. My wife was. I was just talking to her about it. She's like, I can't believe like you talk to your dad all the time. You guys never talked about that period, like that time of your life. And I was like, nah, like we just don't have that conversation.
Why do you
I
why
think
let me interject. Why do you think that is? Because
I don't
I
know.
just did it with my dad 4 months ago, and I'm 42.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
you know
Like
what?
what?
I think for me is not that I don't think I'm ready, but I don't think he's ready.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I don't wanna force him. I always felt like if he wanted to talk about it, he would, right? Because he's not super. He's like me, right? He's not super open with his emotions, but
Yeah,
if something's on his mind, he's gonna tell you.
yeah,
So I always felt like if he wanted to have that conversation, he would spark it.
yeah,
And I'd be more than willing to go into it with him. I know it's gonna be uncomfortable, and I know it's gonna be a rough one, but
yeah,
I'm leaving it to him for now, right? And he's getting older, so at some point I'm gonna have to press the button on him and be like,
yeah,
"Yo, we got to talk about what happened, just from my own clarity." Um,
yeah.
but like I said, I feel like everything that happened in my life has happened for a reason. It's got me to where I am. So if I don't know, then I'm okay. But I'd like to know. I'd like to know.
Yeah. Let me offer, if you would, entertain my perspective. This is not advice by any stretch. So my father's old school. Like his father didn't talk to him. He was learning how to talk to me as a son on the fly, right? Because he didn't have the reference.
Yeah,
When we finally had the conversation, the aha moment for me was I was so off-putting as a child and I didn't want the information. He was so used to not offering information to people that didn't want it. So we would have gone the rest of however long our lives are alive together, not having a conversation if I hadn't said something.
yeah,
I'm just offering that. I'm not saying that that's the case for you, but I was like, well, surely he would say something. He's like, and I have a good dad. Like, there's no salacious stuff. Like, I put the distance in between us, but because we weren't equally, like, neither one of us was emotionally mature enough to have conversations, have a tough conversation, it wasn't going to be had. And we'd be
yeah.
around each other, holidays or whatever. So for what it's worth, I would just
Just,
so that in the
just.
back of your mind. Yeah. But yeah, let's get back to your pops came back in your life. He had some things to deal with. He came back. Now he's available. What did that look like?
So initially it was like I said, it was visitation, right? So it
Okay.
was every other weekend, and I was still young enough. I was playing football, but because football mostly games were on the weekends, he was able to take me to the games.
Okay.
He would come pick me up, and so through that we got to spend more time together, other than just the weekend. So during football season, we spent every weekend together,
Okay.
right? Which was really cool because football season comes right after the summer, and so as visitation got real, like I would spend the whole summer with him, and then we would spend every weekend together,
Gotcha.
right? And then I get that everybody gets that 2 weeks or 3 weeks if you're lucky during Christmas time to take that
Mm-hmm.
break. So I would stay the first week with my mom, and then the next 2 weeks I get to go with him. So we start getting like we hadn't gotten any time for a few years to all of a sudden we're getting like half the year we get to see each other all the time.
Yeah.
And like I said, at first it was weird, because you're going from not ever seeing them to being like, yo, hey, what up, man? Like
Right.
we're getting close. Like we having real conversations. We talking about like stuff that's going on and in the neighborhood, stuff to stay away from.
Gotcha.
I'm starting to get some of those real conversations that I hadn't gotten or that I felt like I didn't need, but they seemed really important to me at the time. Um, and that built, for the next, I would say probably 4 years until I got to high school. So all through, I say probably sixth grade, all the way through middle school, we spent a whole lot of time together,
Okay.
because it became a situation where he was stable enough to where, he might just come pick me up from school randomly. You know what I mean? Like I'll be waiting at the bus stop and he'd pull up and I'd be like, oh, that's my dad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so it was one of those things where we started to build a really solid relationship. And I was, I was ecstatic for something that I thought I didn't need,
That's really interesting that you said that, because I was going to ask about were you young enough to actually form resentment, like in that space where he was gone? And if so, I mean, it sounds like it kind of quickly went out the window, but I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, no, you know what? I never really held on to it. I definitely felt it early, like, why
Okay.
aren't you here?
Yeah.
Um, but just for transparency's sake, my dad was so right around the 80s, right? The 80s, drugs hit
Hmm.
everywhere hard, right?
Yeah.
In the Bay Area, especially because gangs and all that kind of start taking over around that time. So my dad was struggling with drug addiction,
Gotcha.
and so initially when he was gone, I was upset. But then we went to go visit him one time in rehab, and I actually, as a kid, I felt sorry for
Oh, wow.
him.
Wow.
I had seen him used before when they
Yeah.
were still together, and it was a really weird experience for me
Yeah.
that I didn't connect to until I was a full adult.
Yeah.
Um, and then he was gone, and I was upset. And then I saw him, and I was like, "Ooh, he's not doing good."
Yeah.
Like I can't be mad at him. He's not okay. Um, and then it was like another year before I saw him again, and he looked like he did. Like when I saw him in rehab, I guess maybe it was a part of it. Like he didn't have no facial hair.
Wow.
He normally, like when I saw him as a kid, he had like a little fro. He had like it looked like they just ran the clippers over his head.
Yeah.
He had no lineup or nothing. Like I was like, oh man. When I saw him again, he looked like himself, and I
Wow.
was like, that's my dad.
Yeah.
And it felt good to see him that way. And so like I said, the only time I really had any resentment was when it first happened, and then a little bit later in my life. Um, I don't know where it came from. He got on me about something in school I had done, and in my head, I didn't say it. Like I didn't say it to him. In my head, I was like, "It's your fault," And I felt like that for like the whole time he's yelling at me. I'm ignoring him and what he's saying, and I'm like, "It's your
Yeah.
fault." And those are only two times in my life that I remember having any resentment towards him for not
Okay.
being available, for not being present.
Yeah.
Other than that, like I said, I felt like there was a time where I felt like I didn't need it, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. And then when he came back, it was like, he's here. And that's all that matters.
So I want to make sure I got the story correct. When your parents split shortly thereafter, your mother remarried.
Hmm.
That was your stepfather. That was the workaholic. That was a
Hmm.
provider more so than anything. And your dad came back in your life, and your stepfather was still part of your life at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
My mom and my stepfather stayed together until my freshman year of college. So from the time I was
Okay.
like 6.5 until I was a freshman in college.
Okay. Did they play nice in the sandbox? Was there ever any issues with him being available, or what perspectives one might thought of the
Yeah.
other?
Yeah. I mean, they had their issues.
Mm.
I don't know how he was doing it, but at some point in my life, I remember he was cheating. And me and my mom had moved out. Like
Mm.
we left. We were gone. We actually lived in Vallejo for like a year.
Gotcha.
They split up, and but they didn't get divorced. They
Okay.
split up. We lived separately. He did his thing, but then eventually, over the course of that year, he started showing up a little more. Right? He was there, spending the night, and then next thing I know, mom's like, "Yeah, we're moving back to Richmond." And I'm
Oh, wow. Wow.
back to the same neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? Back to the same neighborhood, which I'm like, okay, I get to go see my friends, but this neighborhood is nothing like the neighborhood I live in Vallejo. Like
Right.
me and my mom live in a 2-bedroom apartment, but it's 2 master bedrooms. I got my own bathroom, you know what I
Gotcha.
mean? I got a walk-in closet. Like I'm living the dream.
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, we're moving back to Richmond, which is a 800 square foot house where we're all on top of each other.
Yeah.
So they had numerous times where that was kind of going on throughout the course of their marriage, but like I said, he wasn't around, so I didn't,
Yeah.
they didn't argue too much because he wasn't there to argue. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
he was like, yo, I'm too tired for this. I'm going to my room. You got to deal with it, kind of thing.
Wow. All right, let's kind of transition to you moving into an adulthood, right? You said you got a football scholarship, and
Mhm.
I'm always interested in athletes' perspectives, especially those at a scholarship that are, there's added pressures of college. Were you prepared for college physically and mentally in playing football on a scholarship?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Mm.
So I'm young. I was young. I graduated at 17,
Mm-hmm.
and like I turned 17 in March, and
Gotcha.
was in college, in August.
Right.
So I was really young, mentally and physically, right? Because when you're in college, you got guys that are 24, 25.
Yeah.
We had a guy or two guys actually that were Marines that had come back to play. You know what I mean? So these dudes are like 27 and 29. Like these are
Yeah.
full grown men. So it definitely wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
On the football side of it. As far as academics go, I'd always been a good student, so the academics didn't bother me.
Okay.
But being on your own, especially for me, because I went from California to Michigan. I didn't have any family in Michigan. My nearest family member was in Memphis, Tennessee, so that ain't
Wow.
close at all.
Yeah.
Um, I had never really seen snow in person other than like throwing some snowballs in Reno once when I was a kid. So
Yeah.
I got out there and I was really on my own, and so I had to grow up fast. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I had to mature really quickly, which I think I did, kind of because of my upbringing. You know what I mean? I had kind of been on my own, even though I had sisters. I was the only boy.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I did by myself. I was my mom's only child. You know what I mean? So I was used to being alone and just my friends.
Yeah.
So it was cool. I mean, it wouldn't change it for the world, but
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't ready for it.
How would you describe your career, your college career overall? Are you happy with it?
Um, I feel like I could have been better for sure. I feel like I always say if I was a year older, things would have been different because um, I matured
Yeah.
like a year later than everybody else.
Yeah.
Um, kind of, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I felt like when I graduated, I was just turning 21. That following year, I was bigger and stronger and faster than I had been the year before.
Gotcha.
And I was always kind of playing a year behind.
Yeah.
Um, but my career was cool. It was what it was supposed to be.
Gotcha.
I'm not as tall as I should have been, not as big as I should have been, not as you know what I mean. All you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
always look back and nitpick that stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I had a really good career. We won a couple conference championships. We
Okay.
were we were ranked really high at one point, and so I don't complain about it at all.
That's dope, man. How did you parlay that experience into your work, your career post college? What did you do?
It's funny. So I went into college as a biomedicine major. I wanted to
Oh,
be a veterinarian. So I spent the first 3 years in literally in biomedicine, veterinary studies,
wow.
and then I became a starter. And so my schedule changed. Right, my schedule became more football laden. It was more important. Right,
Yeah.
so I would go to class. I would go to weights and all that in the morning, go to class all day, go to practice, and then after practice, go to dinner. But then I had lab from 7 to 10 every
Wow.
night.
Yeah.
So lab 7 to 10, then I got to go do homework, and I got to get up the next morning at 5. I was like, yo, I did it for a semester and a half, and I was like, classes are only getting harder,
Yeah.
right? And football is like they pay for me to go to school, so I can't be
Right.
like, yeah, coach, I'm not gonna make it. I got a class that's only gonna fly so many times.
Yeah.
So I ended up switching to business because they told me business was easy, and at this particular school it was. I mean, it's a lot. By that time, right, junior year is mostly group projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're doing presentations, you're building out a business, like you're doing that kind of stuff. So it was easy.
Yeah.
Um, my only issue with the switching was that everybody thought I was just a football kid. You know what I mean? Like they wanted to do all the work and be like, all right, you could just stand up there with us during the presentation. I'm like, bro, I'm not no dummy. Like,
Right.
I'm in business because I want to keep playing football, not because I'm trying to find the easy way out.
Right.
So that was a struggle, especially because I hadn't been in any of the previous classes. Like all of a sudden, I'm
Gotcha.
just this new guy in business, and so I struggle with that a little bit, trying to like separate myself from being the football player and
Yeah.
being a student. Um, but I carried that into, once I graduated, I got a job at a marketing firm, um, doing some business to business sales, which
Okay.
was great. Made some good money, but I worked too many hours. I was working 60 plus hours on the minimum side. It was 60 hours.
Gotcha.
And so I hated it. Like I just did not like it. Putting on a suit and a tie every day was not my thing. And so I got out of that and got into personal training first, and then
Okay.
into strength and conditioning after. And that's what I've been doing since then.
All right. So have you ever had like do you ever go through the what ifs of if you had stayed on the biomed track? I mean, from biomed to business, I was a business major because I couldn't be a biomed major, but does that ever get to you at any time?
No, no. I mean, it doesn't, honestly. I look back at it and it actually set me up
Yeah.
to do the strength conditioning. Because in order to get certified, you had to have a degree or some background in that particular field, or in,
Gotcha.
some kind of biological science.
Yeah.
And so by default, I had it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was only 2 semesters away from graduating with that degree.
Okay.
Um, so it actually ended up working out. And I got dogs and cats, and we had all this stuff all my life. And I don't think I could be a vet. You know what I mean? I take my dog to the vet now, and I look at the dude, and I'm like, nah,
Yeah.
nah,
My
yeah.
my oldest son, that's one of the things he wants to be as a veterinarian. I might have to send him your way to have a conversation. All right,
Yeah.
let's get to the fatherhood, your current fatherhood. So all of this is part of the journey, but what does family come into your life? And I want to talk about how prepared you were for marriage and family, because I got some aha moments for me, boy. Woo,
Mm-hmm.
like you, if I was a year older, if I was 2 years older and a little bit more mature,
Right.
things would have been a little different. But let's
Yeah.
hit let's hear your story.
I think, and I'll get back into the story, but I'm gonna say this part is I think fatherhood made me a better husband. And my wife can attest to that.
Yeah.
Is that when I became a father, I had a lot of clarity on my role and my position. I always tell people that I have been searching for my purpose,
Mm-hmm.
trying different things and working in different fields and professional settings and college settings, trying to chasing all these different things. And then when I found out I was a father, I found my purpose, and I think that's what
Yeah.
made it easier for me to step away from some of those other things and focus on being a father.
Yeah.
Um, all that being said, me and my wife have been together since I was a sophomore in high school and she was a freshman.
Okay.
So we're going on, what is it, 24 or 25 years at this point.
Wow.
So we've been together for,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Um, we've been together for a really long time. And we've grown together. I've grown, I've matured, and done
Yeah.
some different things. But I think initially, when we got married, I wasn't mature. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
We had been in relationships, so I knew how to be that
Yeah.
guy. Um, but marriage is another level of commitment and growth that's necessary. And I was still just being her boyfriend. You know what I mean? Um,
Wait, let's pause there because I think that's gonna hit. That just hit me. That
yeah.
just hit me. I thought magically after the ceremony something was going to change in me. You
No,
didn't.
it takes
Yeah.
work, man. You got to actively do that, right?
Yeah.
I think any transition in your life, you have to be active in. You can't just let it happen to you.
Yeah.
It's got to happen through you, you know? And that's why I said that becoming a father made me a better husband, because I was actively working towards being a better man so that I could be a better father.
Yeah.
I didn't do that going into marriage. I wasn't working on myself. I was like, yeah, we've been together for 10 years. I already know how to do this. Yeah,
You
let's put a
got it.
ring on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's why I say I was a husband boyfriend for for a few
Yeah.
years until we got pregnant with our
Yeah.
first.
what did that change look like? Can you pinpoint some of the major shifts in your thought
With
process, your actions? But what did it look
I,
like?
I've always, like I would say, I've always considered other people and things that I do. Like I said, I like to think before I react or
Yeah,
respond. And I've always considered other people, but it was at a whole new level. Like I felt like I was responsible for another person's life
that's
now.
scary. That is so scary.
Um, and some of that, you get some of that with marriage, like, you're taking on
It's
this
not
other
the
person,
same.
but it's not the same. Yeah, it's not
It's
the
not the
same at
same.
all,
Yeah,
because that's a full grown adult. Like, if I mess up, she's still gonna figure it out.
yeah,
With this kid, it's like, man, if I mess up today, I might not even know it was a mess up until she's 25 and like something happens and they're like, oh man, we're sitting across from each other on the couch and they're telling the therapist, remember that time?
yeah, 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 yeah.
um, and so I took all of that and I started reading books. I started
Mm,
my kind of own personal development like journey, right?
yeah,
Because I had to figure out, if I was going to be the best father I could be, and I had to be the best man first,
yeah, yeah.
right? And oh, go
What
ahead.
now I was gonna say what do you what has fatherhood taught you the most about yourself? And is it different for each child? Your children are 2 years apart,
Yeah.
so I
Hmm.
imagine some things you didn't get right with number one that you're more aware of with number two. But like, what was what changed in you the most when the child actually arrived and you came to the realization about your responsibilities? But like, what did you
Yeah.
learn the most?
I think I am sometimes still right, and I'm still don't God's still working on me.
Sure did.
Um, I am very nonchalant about things. Like, I'm very like I said, when me and my wife first got together, the first couple of years, she said I ain't had no emotions. And that's because, like, I've experienced some very traumatic things in my life, like,
Right.
and so I've learned to, like, if I'm still here, then it's cool, right? It's not the worst it's ever been. It's not the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
Everything is cool. And that doesn't really work well when you got, like, I would say women, but I don't want to be sexist, right? But it doesn't really work well with them. Like, they need to feel something from you,
Yeah.
right? And so that's my biggest weakness, is like, my daughter will be crying and I'll be like, you all right, man? Are you okay? You okay? Cool. You fine. Like, and then I realize, oh, I need to talk. I need to kind of get
Yeah.
into that. Let's talk about it a little bit. How are you feeling? What are you feeling? How are you feeling? Like, how's every, and there's always something, another level to it. With me, it's like, what you get on the surface is all I'm giving you. So
Yeah.
that's what you got to go with. And I've learned to kind of be a little bit more gentle.
Yeah.
And that
Girls
works
will do
well with my
that.
wife too, because she
Incredibly
wants,
well.
yeah, because she needs that too.
The one thing that I picked up through this podcast process is the same thing, journey about figuring me out, how to communicate better. It's called Dear Son, but it stems out to my life, right? And I
Hmm.
had a guest on, my Mikhail Brown, early on,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he said, Mikhail, he said at the
Hmm.
end of it, he asked his children, "What do you need from me?" Not what do you need me to buy, what do you need from school tomorrow, but am I showing up for you enough? And I was like, if I got nothing else from this conversation, I had to thank him, because I never do that. I'm
Yeah.
provide, show, present an emotion, systematically, so that it looks like I'm in tune and doing all of this. But I never asked, and I kind of went back to the postpartum thing that I referenced earlier. I never asked my wife, let alone my kid, like, am I enough for you? What
Hmm.
is missing in what you expect from me and what I'm giving you? And it's a very tough. It's tough to think about it. And I stayed in my head quite a bit before I started asking.
Hmm.
But it's I was surprised by the answers that I got back, and it's been helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a tough thing. It's I don't know if it's so tough to navigate as it is tough for us to get out of our way as men, or
Right.
as me, right?
Right.
And
Right. Right. Right.
just be the person that deep down you really want to be. Like, I don't want to be mean mugging all the time. I just got so used to mean mugging, that was my face. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I missed a lot of opportunities and a lot of moments inside and outside of my home, just just not dealing with me. What if we were to take you out of the seat and put your oldest daughter in the seat? What would she say? The type of father that you are.
My oldest is I don't know. I say they both are daddy's girls, right?
Okay.
But my oldest is like she's on my hip, kind of. You know what I mean? Like she's like my road dog. Like they both are, but like she's ride for daddy no matter what. Like
Yeah.
later for you, mommy. I'm riding for daddy no matter what. So I'm sure she would say some very very loving things.
Mm.
But I know one thing that I've heard her say, and I've even heard her sister say, is that daddy's serious. And she didn't say it negatively, but when she said it, I felt it.
Yeah.
You know, daddy's always serious. And as much fun as we have, as much laughing as we do, as much goofing around as we do, she still feels that.
Yep.
And so actually they just said it last night. While we were making a Instagram reel where we were laughing and joking and playing around, afterwards I said it's time for bed. And she's like, Daddy's always so serious.
Dang. I haven't figured it out, man. I've been in that mode so long in my life, and especially my experience in corporate America. Like there's a stress of always being on point, right? Always got to be on point. Always got to be ready. Always have the right answer, the right path to the solution, and I never turn it off when I come home.
Yeah.
And I get the same thing. It's like, no, but we have intentional fun. Yeah, that period is fun, but like you always serious. Like we don't even like sometimes we don't even want to approach you, and I'm completely unaware of it, right? So that's definitely something I got to work through. What makes you nervous about the next stage of fatherhood as your daughters grow and mature?
So I got a 9-year-old. The next stage I think is her being an adolescent, being a teen, right? Because the next few years is kind of the same, right? She's still
hopefully
underneath.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's underneath that kind of teen thing, right? She's a fourth grader, so in a couple years she'll be in middle school. I've worked in middle schools. I know what the middle schools. I was in middle school. Like I know what the middle schools are like.
Right.
And so I am right now hoping that we are preparing her for all of the wild things that come with being a middle schooler. Because she lives a very sheltered life. And I tell my wife this all the time. It's like, we got to send both of them to like my cousin's house and my aunt's house and just let them stay for a weekend. Cause we have done a really good job of providing a life we didn't have for them. But sometimes I feel like it's at their detriment. It's like they don't have the street smarts that I had to have. And I don't need them to have them at the same level. Right. But I need them to be aware of like something might not be going right here. Like be around it, aware of your surroundings. And they're so comfortable in their life. It's like, they're just kind of walking through life, like, you know. And so I'm like, yo, when they get to middle school, some of those adult themes are going to start happening, and
absolutely
they're not ready for it. Like I know they're not ready now, and maybe over the next couple of years we can prep them, especially my older one, because my younger daughter, she's a little bit tougher, right? She's a little bit more rough and tumble, and so she's probably going to be a little more ready for that. But I don't know. You never know, right? But at least she's kind of giving off that vibe now. But my oldest is like head in the clouds. Like life is her saying her thing is life is lit, right? And she just doesn't know that it's other stuff out there that it's other people that life isn't lit, and they are looking for an opportunity to bring somebody else down with them. So that's the one thing that I'm like concerned about is like they are going to one day walk out of this door and meet life. And I don't think they have yet,
What do you think the best version of you looks like? I mean, we work to it every day, but like, what do you think some of the gaps are to get to that best version?
As I mentioned, man, I'm still working on my own personal emotional intelligence with my family and with myself, like getting a deeper connection with who I am on a daily basis, and being that without any restrictions, right? Because there's like you said about mean mugging, And we talked about E40 at the very beginning, but E40 is like, you know, I got a mirror in my pocket and I practice acting hard. It's like,
Yeah.
that was a real thing in my neighborhood. Like, you couldn't
Wow.
come out of the house looking soft because people would pick on you.
Yeah.
Right. They could smell it from a mile away. And I was a nerd at the time. You know what I mean? I was heavy into school and books and science and all that. So I had to look the part,
Yeah.
because once they found out I liked, like, you know, science, it was like, oh man, you smart. You
Right.
know?
Right. Right.
Right.
Right.
So for me, it's like kind of shedding that kind of hard exterior, not to be
Yeah.
soft. Like, I don't, you know, I would hate to be categorized as soft, but I do want to be in touch with my own emotions a little
Right.
bit more, being able to be vocal about them. I think a lot of times as men, we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, society tells us that we can't have those feelings or that we shouldn't feel that way. And
Yeah.
so we continue to perpetuate that. But for me and my family, I definitely want to be in connection with my feelings and be able to tell my wife or my daughters, hey, this is why I'm responding this way. Right. This is why I'm saying it. This is why I feel like I feel, or this is why it looks like I'm being serious.
Yep.
Right. And being able to
Context.
have that conversation and have them have an understanding, because it's not foreign to them to hear me talk that way.
Yeah. Context, man. I think I want to end on that note, man. It's been a great conversation. It's been really great getting to know you. I'm a fan of what you do, the messages that you promote. One day I'm gonna get back in the gym. We're not gonna talk about that right now, but let the people know what you have going on, because I know you have challenges. I know you have plans. Like forfeit fatherhood is very indicative of the type of man you are and the service that you're offering. But let the folks know how they can find you. Let them know about your products. Just take the spotlight.
Will do. So I guess first and foremost, since we're on a podcast, I will mention, and we mentioned before, that I also have a podcast. It's the Forfeit Fatherhood podcast. And like this podcast, you know, we're talking about fatherhood with fathers, sometimes myself, but we're touching on the four tenets of fatherhood, which is family, faith, finance, and fitness. You know, so there's some financial literacy parts. There's some, you know, religion based parts. There's, you know, obviously we talk about family. We can't get around that.
Right.
But that last part is fitness. And the reason that I think that's important is, obviously it's in my wheelhouse. It's what I do. But for me, if I want to be the best father I can be, right? Like, I love fatherhood. And I'm assuming if somebody's listening to this podcast, they love fatherhood.
Yep.
I would like to be a father for as long as humanly possible. And the only way for me to do that is if I'm healthy, right? So I got to make sure that I'm taking care of my fitness, right? Not only that, but like, when you have young children, they require you to move and run and
Yes.
play and jump. And like, if you're out of breath or you don't have the energy because you had to work, and you can't give that to your kid, you can't be present and available, I think you're leaving something on the table in terms of fatherhood. So I actually work with fathers who are trying to be more present and available, so that some other person, some coach or some teacher, isn't the actual father figure in their life.
Right.
You know, so helping guys lose weight, and you know, losing the weight is honestly a byproduct, right? Because more of what we do is when we have our coaching calls, we're talking about stuff like this, right? We're talking about, you know, personal development and things they can do to make themselves better, as a man, and as a result, they might lose 20 or 30 pounds along the way.
Right.
But you know, it's all about who you become on the journey, not the destination, right? So if we
Yeah.
get 30 pounds off you and you start to look good and you walk into the room and your wife is looking at you different, that has a big impact on how you can show up in your life,
True.
right? But if you show up and you're uncomfortable and what you got on, your kids want to go swimming, but you got to wear a t-shirt, you know, that kind of stuff changes the experiences that your family has around you.
Very true.
And so, like I said, the fitness part of it is huge. And right now, just being specific, I have a New Year's kind of thing, right? Every year around New Year's, everybody's got resolutions, and one of those big things is that everybody wants to lose weight, right? So I believe in numbers like something like 87% of people have losing weight as one of their New Year's resolutions. The only problem with that is that by the end of the year, only 2% hold it. So I, along with, you know, with those resolutions, is I step in and we do a 28-day challenge where I help you build out what's really missing, which is the mindset. Of course,
Okay.
there's the diet and there's the exercises, but building out a mindset that's going to lead to sustainable weight loss over the course of the year. So you're actually working towards your goals. It's really more of a goal creation, goal execution challenge than it is a weight loss challenge. And again, like I said, weight loss just kind of becomes the byproduct. Got
it. All right, well, we'll make sure to have all of the information below, linked in the description. If you're on audio, check just scroll down in the description of this episode. Of course, on YouTube, you'll see it there as well. I appreciate you, man. Like I said, we've been having exchanges in passing via social media, and I'm glad we finally locked in to get this done. It's been a pleasure to understand your story. A lot of it resonates with me, as I'm sure it will with the audience. So thank you. Hopefully this won't be our last conversation, because as I say with every guest, we didn't get to half of the stuff that that I would really want to dig into, and just kind of look at the progress. That's the other thing. I don't want this podcast to be woe is me, we got problems. Here's some of the things that we're doing to fix it, and here's how we're progressing. Right? I want to look at it from that perspective too. So definitely, guys, check out the link in the description below, his information. While we're on it, my listening audience, if you're on the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google, we're on Audible too, which is really cool. Please rate the podcast. It means something. It's not just something that we ask you to do. So rate mine, rate Roz as well. If you're on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and you hit the notification bell so that you're aware of this content when it is dropping. I am not going to prolong this any further. We appreciate you guys. God bless you. Peace.
The Dear Son podcast is produced by D. John's Live Studios. All rights reserved. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time.